Hey everyone, D&D Detective here. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about the newest book out of Kobold Press. That would be their Tome of Beasts 2 book. For anyone looking to buy this product, I wanted to lay out what I think are some of the good and bad things about this product. To be clear, I don't get any sponsorship from Kobold Press, and I bought this with my own money. Now let's talk about the good things about this product. So first up, this is a massive book. It's over 400 pages in length, making it by far longer than any product produced by Wizards of the Coast. In this, you'll be getting about 400 monster stat blocks to use in your campaign. Many of the monsters in this book do things that are atypical of what you would find in other products. For instance, a lot of the monsters in this book have a unique use for their reaction. One thing this book has that a lot of products don't have is that it has links within the PDF so that you can click on, say, a reference page number, and it will bring you to that page. It's one of those things that takes that extra bit of work for a publisher, but that makes a big difference when it comes to using a product, especially when it's on something like a mobile device. Another thing I really like about the book, and that again avoids a mistake I see from a lot of third-party products, is that for the most part, it keeps the stat blocks here within a page, and the creatures aren't absolutely loaded with abilities, especially abilities that themselves take half a page to explain. There are of course exceptions to this, but as a DM, I always appreciate when the company keeps things unique, while also balancing that this actually needs to be used at a table. In the back of the book, there's a breakdown of creatures by CR, terrain, and type. This is something that they did in the Creature Codex, but not in the original Tome of Beasts, and I think for DMs, it makes it a lot easier to figure out what creatures they want to use. There are also a lot of unique monsters in this book. One type that really benefits from this is constructs. Yes, there are clockwork creatures in this book, but there are also a lot of constructs that are unique and that very much do their own thing in here. In general, I would say the book has repeated themes of death, the cold, and corruption. A lot of the creatures in here are pretty weird. I expect this book to have a lot more aberrations, beasts, and monstrosities compared to the previous two monster books from Kobold Press. At the same time, I expect it to have substantially less humanoids. If you're looking for a book for humanoids, you are overwhelmingly better buying the Creature Codex. One thing I also like about the book is the number of plants in it. Plants are generally a pretty underutilized enemy in the game. You're nearly getting as many unique plant stat blocks in this book as there are in the other two books combined. Finally, the artwork in this book is actually really well done. The quality is really there, and it really brings the monsters to life. Now moving on to the bad. So first, let's talk some of the major issues that I have with the product. The biggest issue that I have with the book is that certain creatures, yet again, get the short end of the stick. Like with their two earlier books, Celestials, Elementals, Giants, and Oozes have very few stat blocks in this book. I've made a chart here where you can get an idea of just what the breakdown is. Keep in mind, though, that I did not count creatures that have an adult and younger versions as separate stat blocks. I just counted them as one creature. The impact of this is basically that it almost exclusively affects dragons. But frankly, to me that just goes to show how the dragon type needs more variety. It's not all bad news. The book does contain some interesting celestial options that are very different from what you'd expect. Though as I said earlier, there are still very few celestials in this book. If creatures are morphed or changed by living in a given plane, as we've seen with official and unofficial creatures that have resided in places like the Shadowfell, Feywild, Abyss, or Nine Hells, then it stands to reason that there should be tons of creatures in a celestial plane that are morphed by the influence of the plane. The Gilly Dubs is a great example of how this can be done. What looks like a plant creature is actually a celestial. If you look past its appearance and read up on its explanation, you can see why this is. Yet it is still only one of 13 celestial stat blocks to appear in a book featuring over 400 pages of monsters. This book also has a small, but varied set of dragons. Yet even with them taking on different forms than the usual dragons, they are all still way too conservative when it comes to providing different monsters out of each. A multi-attack with claws, a bite, some kind of presence ability, and something that recharges like a breath weapon. Also likely to be a flyer, though if you do burrow or swim. We've been here. We've seen it all before. Why are demons, devils, monstrosities, undead, and aberrations allowed to be so vastly different, but the dragon type is so limited mechanically? Especially when we're talking about a product that isn't bound to any of the restrictions of the Forgotten Realms. Don't get me wrong, within these narrow confines there is variety, but of all the monster types, the dragon seems to have regularly been pigeonholed into a template. So that pretty much covers the major issues I had with the book, but there are some minor issues as well. The Herald of the Void seems like it's more like an undead or an aberration than a fiend. Another is the Hongake, which, again, doesn't seem like it should be an elemental, but rather fits more as an aberration. Then there is also the Nezu Ha. Apart from the fact that it speaks Sylvan, this seems like more like an aberration or undead creature. There are probably others as well. Depending on how your campaign setting works, you may find that the creatures in this book are better suited for another creature type. Another issue is that in the creatures by type and creatures by challenge rating appendix pages, the links to moving to a creature's page is the page number and not the name of the creature. Because of this, it's actually pretty easy to miss the link. A better way of doing this might have been to have the link apply to both. Speaking of which, it may be more beneficial for everyone if these appendix tables are organized by monster type with the CR value included. I don't find the pure CR tables all that helpful, especially when there are a large number of listings. But a table that broke creatures down by type and then included their CR value would be a lot more useful to me. Similar to how it's done with terrain already. The book also has no appendix, which for the most part is fine. However, this presents a problem for cold iron weapons. These weapons are brought up in the book, and certain creatures are likely to be resistant against your weapon damage if you aren't wielding a magic weapon or cold iron weapon. If you just own the physical book, though, and not the PDF, you have no way of knowing why cold iron weapons are important if you encounter them in a stat block. Unless that stat block is the commander of Horn and Gold. If cold iron weapons were important, then mention of them should have been included in the start of the book, and not in whatever stat block they first appear in. That way players have an easy way to access them that frankly is a lot more logical. A lot of effort went into playtesting this product, but be aware that, like any book with monsters, some of the monsters here are definitely on the harder side of their challenge rating. Take the Brain Hood. Maybe you could argue this creature is a CR 1/2, given its health, AC, attack bonus, immunities, and ability to fly. But the psionics, which allow it to cast spells like Sleep Undetected, make this to me a far bigger threat to a party than a simple CR 1/2 would otherwise appear. Especially with similar ability to cast Blur and Hold Person, and with impressive access to cantrips. And access to cantrips that's more extensive than a level 9 mage. For the most part, I didn't see the kind of problems with proofreading that I have found in past Kobold Press products, especially with the Midgard Hero's Handbook. There were, however, a few minor things, like the Neza Ha saying contractor when they actually meant contractee, or the appendix having a creature with ZZ appendix next to their name. But it's nothing major. Overall, I think this is a solid addition to the toolkit of any DM. Like I said earlier, it's not a book that is going to give you a ton of humanoids, But if you're a DM that is looking to go through the new Icewind Dale adventure at the moment, and are looking for frost or undead creatures, or if you're looking for strange creatures, especially aberrations and monstrosities, you'll find plenty of sources of inspiration and stat blocks in this book. Alright, well thanks everyone for watching. For those of you that have subscribed to my channel for learning more about Baldur's Gate modding, I plan to have a new video out sometime by the end of this week, or perhaps the weekend, that will examine how to create your own joinable NPCs in Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition. Otherwise, if you like what you saw here, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you had your own thoughts about what you'd like to see covered on the channel, be sure to leave a comment. Thanks for watching.